Hello guys, compliments of the season. I'm glad to welcome you guys back to our page this year where we have more exciting contents for you. On today's session, we'll be looking at the overview of immigration policies that changed in the year 2023. And we'll be having as a case study the big 5 countries, the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. So stay tuned. The first country we'll be discussing is the United States. And one of the changes that happened in the year 2023 were the updates to the student visa policies that were initiated in the year 2023. And this year, the US increased processing fees for the class F, M, and J visas. Consular officers were given more authority to consider the current intentions of applicants under the F, M, and J student visa classes. Also, student visa applicants will also have to provide passport details as part of an anti-fraud initiative. The next change we'll be looking at were the changes around relaxation for employment authorization documents, EADs. The eligibility criteria for initial and renewal applications for employment authorization documents, EADs, were significantly relaxed by the UCIS this year, 2023. This is expected to help struggling with delays in availability of visas. Also, the maximum validity of employment authorization documents was extended to 5 years by UCIS, providing or proving beneficial to non-citizens who need employment authorization in certain categories. Changes were also made under the AB5 policy. Under this policy, implemented by the UCIS, investors who create 10 jobs will be allowed to be reimbursed after 2 years. The policy meant to align the AB5 Reform and Integrity Act of 2022 states that these investors will also remain eligible for a US green card. The processing speed of AB5 visa application was also improved with these new policies. The next change was to the H-1B visa renewal pilot program. A limited number of H-1B specialty occupation workers in the US will be allowed to renew their visas. According to the State Department officials, the rollout of the H-1B domestic visa renewal pilot will only be limited to 20,000 participants initially. Applicants will just have to mail their visas to the State Department and will not be allowed to travel outside the United States. Lastly, for the US, toughening of citizenship tests was introduced in the year 2023. The new format sees the inclusion of a speaking section in the updated test by the US Citizenship and Immigration Services, UCIS. What visitors need to know is that an officer will show the subjects images of everyday situations and ask candidates to explain them verbally. This is a change from the current test since the assessment of an applicant's speaking ability in 2008 version was done by way of questions about personal queries. Besides, the insertion of a multiple choice portion in place of oral short answer questions on American history and the government could raise the difficulty of the test as it calls for increased requirement in in-depth knowledge of the matter. New Zealand's immigration experienced significant changes in the year 2023, and the first we'll be looking at is the changes that happened to the accredited employer work visa. Accredited employer work visas are granted with a maximum of 3 years. Holders of this visa do not have a time limit on how long they can spend in New Zealand if they are paid above the median wage. Upon implementation of these changes, people that hold accredited employer work visa will be granted with a maximum validity of 5 years, and holders will need to spend 12 months offshore if they do not have a clear pathway of securing residence in New Zealand after they have spent 5 years. This change will apply even if the accredited employer work visa holder is paid above the median wage. For example, if you're a butcher or a specialist technician holding a 3-year accredited employer work visa, as at August 1, 2022, you do not have a clear pathway to gaining a resident visa in New Zealand in 2025, Your next accredited employer work visa changes will only be granted for 2 years. You would need to depart New Zealand for 12 months after holding your accredited employer work visa continuously for 5 years. These are the changes that were made particularly to this category of visa. The next changes we'll be discussing will be the skilled migrant category. Under this category, a policy was introduced on the 9th of October 2023. Employers now need to hold accreditation status to support a migrant worker with an SMC application. Workers will need to meet requirements that use a 6-point system and will be provided with interim visas that will allow them to remain in New Zealand until after their SMC application has been processed. Up on your screen now, we have summarized key information associated with the proposed 6-point system below as introduced. The third change we are discussing is the introduction of the Green List Work Residence Visa. For workers earning double the median wage or working in Tier 2 occupations on the Green List, there's good news. If you were in New Zealand during the COVID-19 pandemic and meet this criteria, you can start counting your required 2 years of work experience retrospectively from 29 September 2021. However, there is need to be wary of the following caveats. Employer must be accredited, English language requirements must be satisfied, the job must align with the Tier 2 occupation if that's the basis for your application. And lastly, some applicants may need wage adjustments to meet current median wage levels. The final change we'll be discussing for New Zealand was the rise in tide of median wages. The government increased the median wage, which amounted to an increase of $2 per hour annually. There were also significant changes to immigration policies in Australia in the year 2023. First off, the living expense for international students looking to study in Australia was increased to 24,505 Australian dollars, which is a 17% increment from what it used to be. Also, the concurrent enrollment loophole was closed. This loophole used to allow students to transition from their study visas into a working visa within 6 months of them being in Australia. But that loophole has now been closed by the new policies that was introduced in the year 2023. The third change we'll be looking at were the increase made to visa application fees in 2023. Visa application charges increased by varying percentages. And these percentages are broken down on your screen right now. 15% increase for visitor visa, working holiday visa, work training visa, temporary activity visa, and temporary work visa. This is the short stay specialist. 40% increase for business innovation and investment visas. A 6% increase for other visas, and a 0% increase for Pacific Engagement Visa and Pacific Australia Labour Mobility Visas. Next changes we'll be discussing is the 48 hours work restriction for student visa holders. Student visa holders will be limited to working 48 hours per fortnight, which is an 8 hours increase from the previous limitation, 40 hours per fortnight, before the relaxation of work limitations until 30th of June 2023. Dependents on a student visa will have full-time/limited work rights depending on the principal's applicant's course of study. The last change you'll be looking at for Australia's immigration policies will be the changes to English language requirements. The government have further stated from one of the policies initiated in 2023 that in early 2024, the test score required for a temporary graduate visa will increase from an international English language testing system, the IELTS, or equivalent of 6.0 to 6.5. What students need to know from this is that the test score required for a student visa will increase from 5.5 to 6.0. The test score required for students undertaking an English language intensive course for overseas students before their main course of study will increase from 4.5 to 5.0. Besides, The test score required for students undertaking university foundation or pathway programs that deliver reputable English language training will be 5.5. We have discussed the immigration changes that occurred in the year 2023 in the US, Australia, and New Zealand. If you found this content useful or relevant, don't forget to subscribe, like, and turn on your notifications to get more useful content. Bye.